Kathy, and we'll test my driving skills. I think we've had a lot of firsts at MDF. I think this is our first virtual press conference. It's also the first time since September that I've had to wear a tie. So welcome to everyone. And I'm going to try to queue up just a handful of visuals to accompany me. So bear with me for 1 second. See if my skills on this. If folks can see those slides just to help anchor some of what I'm going to talk about. On behalf of Maine Development Foundation and the Maine Economic Growth Council, I want to welcome you today for the release of the 26th Measures of Growth 2020. The nonpartisan, bipartisan council has put a lot of work into this product this year in the unusual circumstances that we're in. We'll be joined as speakers this morning by our council chair, Steve Von Vogt, by Council Member Sheena Bunnell, Professor of Business Economics and Director of the Maine Health Research Institute at UMaine Farmington, by Senate President Troy Jackson, by Senator Trey Stewart, who has served on the council as a House member for several years now prior to being elected to the Senate, and Commissioner Heather Johnson of the Department of Economic and Community Development, who Heather and her designee are both by statute an integral part of this process with the Growth Council. So just a few quick words about the council itself. For those who are not familiar with the council, it was created in the early 90s to do this kind of work, to focus on a long-term vision and these long-term measures of the health of the Maine economy and the strategies that could move us forward. We like to say it's the toughest body in Maine to get appointed to, because you have to be jointly appointed by the governor, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. And getting those three folks to agree on this group is an impressive testament to who's on this body over the years. And we're proud to administer the work of the council here at MDF. There's a lot of things that are the same this year, despite the incredibly disrupted and transformed environment we're in. One is the council's vision on pursuing a high quality of life for all Maine people, recognizing that a prosperous economy is connected with having vibrant communities and a healthy environment. So it's a balanced perspective, not just let's increase jobs or wages for jobs or wages' sake, but a broad view on the economy, and that has not changed. So we track a number of metrics. This year there are 29 metrics the council has been tracking. Of those, we assign 9 of them a positive for some progress, 14 a minus for some sometimes minor slippage, and 6 were kind of a neutral overall. And every year the council assigns gold stars and red flags to really focus this conversation around some things that are really important to highlight for outstanding relative or absolute performance, or a particular need for continued policy conversation in our state. And I'll cover those real quickly before turning it over to Steve and Sheena. There's also a lot of new things, a lot of new context. This report this year is 8 pages longer, in part so that the council could do justice to the impact of the pandemic and the recession, do justice to generating new insights around the racial justice challenges in Maine, and to say our metrics are long-term, and frankly, much of the data stopped in 2019. So how do we contextualize all of this now in these new times? And a lot of what Steve and Sheena will discuss is really to put this long-term work in this context going forward. In terms of what's specifically new, we've added 2 new indicators, one on racial and ethnic income equity, and one on pre-K education. I don't think I have to belabor the point about why pre-K education and childcare has become of overwhelming importance in terms of the participation of folks in our economy in this environment. Racial and ethnic income equity, the council takes a data-driven approach. So as the country was facing this deep reflection around centuries of racism and its outcomes in our society today, the council said, let's take a look at what the data tells us. And regrettably, the data is pretty stark. And the new metric on racial and ethnic income equity in our state shows, I think, that the wages for all of the populations of color in Maine are only about 60% of the average income levels for white Mainers. And so this is going to take a lot of focus by a lot of us to honestly wrestle with this data and to come up with prescriptions and commitments to move forward to build an economy that is equitable and shares prosperity and growth for all Mainers. We revised a couple of indicators this year. I won't get into that too much. Wages, we had a very similar indicator, but a new approach in terms of trying to tell the story behind that piece better than we have in the past, and the same thing with workforce. So this year, the council assigned 3 gold stars: pre-K education, which I've already spoken to, safety and air quality. Pre-K education because the investments our state has made in recent years have put us in a place where a dramatically higher percentage of the youngest Mainers are participating in public pre-K than in our peer states across the country. We know the job isn't done. We are still not serving enough of this very, very important need, this very, very important seed of our future economy in the state. But we wanted to recognize the tremendous progress. Safety, it is dramatic how much lower the crime rate in Maine is among our peer states, exponentially so. We want to keep it that way, and we want to continue to highlight this factor of safety and community that is a silver lining driving people to move to our state. And then air quality. We had the best air quality in 2019 of any year on record, and we wanted to continue to highlight that Maine's environment is a critical part of our calling card and our brand. But there's parts where we definitely have a long ways to go. Some of these are not new this year. Some of them have been red flags for several years running. Racial and ethnic income equity, our brand new metric, is definitely a red flag and needs our concerted efforts as a state. Workforce, we are seeing the glimmer of in-migration to our state, which is fantastic. And yet it's still not enough to offset the aging of boomers who are leaving the workforce. How can we double down on the positives and grow the workforce that we need? Value added per worker. This ties back to that 10-year economic strategy that Commissioner Johnson spearheaded last year. How do we grow the value of the goods and services produced by each worker in our state so that wages will grow as well? R&D, we know it's going to take greater investment in innovation. We've seen that during this downturn. I think Steve is going to speak to that. Cost of doing business. As much as everything else matters that we can invest in contextually, we have to make sure that people who look to invest here feel like they can make something back on their money and keep those costs of doing business reasonable. And finally, when we talk about this pipeline of talent in our state, the council wanted to highlight that 8th grade math continues to be an area of underperformance for us. And if we're really going to grow the ability for our kids to excel in those STEM jobs of the future, we have to intervene in pre-K, 4th and 8th grade. So that's just a taste of what's in this year's product. Steve and Sheena are going to go deeper on understanding the context, and we look forward to presenting this report to the president and to the Mills administration and hearing from them about how they can leverage this going forward. So I think without further ado, I'm turning it over to you, Steve Von Vogt.
Thanks, Yellow. Now more than ever, Maine needs strong cross-sector leadership and strategic investments based on unbiased data and analysis. This report intersects, supports, and aligns with 2 other new groundbreaking and key pillars for stabilizing and rebuilding Maine's economy moving forward. First, in last year's Measures of Growth report, the council called for a statewide strategic plan for Maine's economy. Governor Mills, since then, has convened leaders of industry, education, labor, government, and the nonprofit sector, including several members of this council, to create a 10-year strategy to grow Maine's economy. Maine's 10-year economic strategy charts a course for creating jobs and increasing prosperity through talent and innovation. Second, Governor Mills' Economic Recovery Committee, the ERC, is guiding the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. On November 24th, the committee issued its report that includes recommendations to help Maine regain its footing and return to its previous growth path. A key to our collective success on this front will be increased investment in research and development. As of 2017, the most recent year for which data is available, Maine's total spending on R&D was about $520 million, which is only 0.8% of our GDP. and ranks Maine 46th out of 50 states. We must and we can do better if we are going to succeed. Examples of how such investment in recent years have positioned Maine companies to respond quickly and efficiently to the urgent needs of the pandemic are IDEX Laboratories of Westbrook, Abbott Laboratories of Scarborough, and Jackson Laboratories of Bar Harbor. Together, their combined adaptations over the last 8 months have exponentially boosted the testing capacity in Maine and in the nation. Puritan Medical Products of Guilford has had such high demand for their swabs that they have both created another manufacturing facility and virtually doubled their workforce. Innovations like these hold the key to Maine's ability to recover and to grow the economy of the future here. Shana?
Thank you, Steve. The unexpected shock of the COVID pandemic and the resulting recession undoubtedly challenges Maine's progress and is prompting permanent structural changes to our economy here in Maine. This has been an unprecedented supply and demand shock to our economy, both here in Maine, nationally, and globally. We believe that this makes the benchmarks and the 26-year body of research that pertains to our measures of growth extremely important. Never before has it been more important to really focus on our measure of growth indicators. This year's report adds critical detail about the short-term economic and health-driven impacts that can frame our long-term realignment and recovery. The 29 indicators within the analysis we offer magnify the importance of Maine's workforce, innovation, connectivity, and shows the impacts of both our long-standing strengths and our most notable challenges as we get ready to shape the aftermath of the pandemic-induced recession and our path forward. For example, the 2020 indicator, and thank you, Yellow, for alluding to that, 8th grade math scores shows only 34% of Maine 8th graders scored as proficient on National Assessment of Education Progress tests in 2019, down from 40% in 2013, and at the same level as in 2007. The national average was 33%, and the New England average was 38%. And then the pandemic hit us. And the uneven application of remote learning in school districts across the state occurred and is still occurring. How will an entire generation of young Mainers' math proficiency and the resulting career and earning potential be impacted by remote learning, particularly if they're from communities or homes with little or no broadband access? This is a huge situation that we are facing here in Maine, and it really is of importance to all of us as we think about our young children. It also reinforces the need for a resilient economy that supports vibrant communities and a healthy environment. It is the Council's longstanding vision that Maine's enduring assets can be the basis for economic development. For instance, the high attributes that are valued in terms of safety, in terms of one of the lowest crime rates in the country, air quality, and water quality were very apparent this summer when some rural Maine communities, including my own, saw a welcomed influx of residents from more urban areas. This migration was enabled by broadband connectivity, which allowed thousands of Mainers to work, learn, and access medical care safely from home. 2020 highlighted the importance of economic stability to Maine households and the corresponding importance of public health to all Maine and Maine businesses. This includes integration of clinical services with community supports. If we are to address what is known as the social determinants of health on created this whole social determinants of health in the 80s. And ever since then, it has been of vital importance to all of us to really focus on these determinants. These include housing, education, behavioral health, food and nutrition, and personal safety. For example, 2 indicators provide stark data about Maine health and well-being and access to affordable care before the pandemic struck. 2/3, approximately 66 of Maine adults were overweight or obese in 2018. This is up 1 percentage point from 2017, and it is equal to the US average. In 2018, healthcare expenditures in Maine was approximately at 17.4% of all personal expenditures, and that is up from 2008. And Mainers devote a higher proportion of expenditures to healthcare than the national and New England averages. At the same time, while 95% of Mainers have access to basic broadband, slightly above the national rate of 94%, and this is according to the FCC, only 55% actually had broadband subscriptions as of 2018. So there's a lot of disparity here. And the pandemic has crystallized the need for public and private efforts and investment to ensure universal broadband usage. An example of how broadband ties into access and affordability for healthcare. For example, since March, Maine healthcare organizations like Northern Light Health report seizing on lessons of clinical office shutdowns and the resulting transition to telehealth services. They are now systematizing telehealth and billing in ways that make a wide range of healthcare services more accessible and affordable, and they have been extremely innovative in their creativity. Yellow, I will now hand it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve and Sheena. Before we turn the report over to the appointing authorities, I just want to mention that our 2 amazing researchers, Lisa Plimpton and Kate DeLudio, are on the line with us. And obviously, I didn't put this data together. These amazing folks did. And we are joined by not only the members of the council speaking today, but 9 other members from the council who are on the line and listening in and lending their support. They're listed in the back of the report, so I won't try to list all of them. I will give an acknowledgement to our immediate former legislative member, Brian Hubble, and then 8 other private sector members of the council from a diverse array are on the horn. So without further ado, on behalf of the council, it's a great privilege to present this report to Governor Mills, to President Jackson, and to the Maine House. Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Yellow. Good morning, and thank you to the Maine Economic Growth Council and Maine Development Foundation for inviting me to speak today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Troy Jackson. I have the great honor of representing Northern Aroostook County in the Maine Senate and serving as Senate President. You know, just a week ago, my colleagues and I were sworn in at the Augusta Civic Center, marking the start of the 130th Maine Legislature. It was a chance for the legislature to hit the reset button and start anew. The reality is that Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, Maine lawmakers, will be working alongside each other day in and day out over the next 2 years. And the challenges that we will be forced to confront are greater than really ever before with COVID-19. The stakes are higher than ever before. Maine families are counting on the Maine legislature to work with Governor Mills to help them pick up the pieces, rebuild their communities, and restart our economy. They need us to put partisanship aside and come together for the sake of our health and economic recovery. And the 2020 Measures of Growth Report, put together by the Bipartisan Maine Growth Council, is going to be a valuable resource in charting a path forward. Each year, the Measures of Growth Report serves as an opportunity to take stock of where we are, the progress we've made, and the areas in which we need to make significant improvements. And once again, this latest edition confirms much of what we know. Mainers are spending too much on healthcare. The cost of energy is too high. Working families are struggling to make ends meet. Affordable housing is hard to come by, and I'm certainly dealing with that right now. And our infrastructure is in bad shape. It also reflects some of the progress that we made in areas in public preschool, high-speed reliable internet, health insurance, and pay equity. But you don't need a report to know the cost of health care remains a problem for working Maine families. It's an issue that I hear about from my constituents almost every day, and it's why we've prioritized policies to try and rein in prescription drug costs and ensure that the healthcare system is putting patients before profits. And despite the fear mongering from insurance companies at public hearings, insurance rates in Maine are decreasing. Mainers who purchase health insurance through the Affordable Care Act are likely to see a 13% decrease in rates. If anything, the public health crisis has underscored the importance of making sure that Mainers can get health care that they deserve at a price they can afford. The good news is that the more Mainers have health insurance, especially compared to the rest of the country, in Maine, we've made a priority to increase access to health care by expanding Medicaid, and it's clearly paying off. With less than a week left for open enrollment to the Affordable Care Act, I encourage Mainers to get covered and reach out and try and get on Enroll 207 to get that coverage. And as we head into the winter months, we were talking about this beforehand, the high cost to heat and power our homes and the businesses across the state is heavy on Mainers' minds. This is an area where there's significant opportunity to invest in renewable energy resources, create good paying jobs across the state and lower costs for Mainers and business owners. I'm also very encouraged in the report by an example of this in the forest products industry through biomass. It's something that I was particularly encouraged to see highlighted in this report. Biomass energy is something I've certainly been passionate about, along with many others here at the legislature for quite some time. Our state is very fortunate to have some of the greatest renewable assets in our vast forests. And by using homegrown Maine energy, we can create new markets, strengthen the forest products industry, and support economic development in rural communities. I also believe that in the report talking about workforce, jobs, the cost or the way that people are paid is certainly something that we need to talk about too. In the forest products industry, Mainers should have opportunities at every corner, every turn, and that is something that has been a long-term problem that I've seen personally firsthand, and something that I think this report highlights as far as wages that are being paid in Maine. I believe that both these things is a win on all fronts for the state of Maine, giving people in Maine great opportunities and doing what we can to strengthen our forest products industry is like I said, a win-win. And finally, this pandemic has proven that Mainers can't afford to wait any longer for high-speed, reliable internet. We can talk about infrastructure. The conversation often centers on our roads and bridges, which is absolutely correct, and this report highlights that too. But internet speed and access tends to get put on the back burner. However, both are essential, and we need them now more than ever to live, work, learn, and so much more. It's what connects Mainers across the state to each other and the rest of the world, and it's what it can actually be another way that we can use to try and entice people to move to Maine. Before we adjourned last year, the Maine legislature was able to pass a $15 million bond to invest in high-speed, reliable internet. It was after a year of trying to pass some amount in a measure, and it was a welcome win. However, we're still far away from what we need as a state, and I see that, I hear from people now more than ever with education, with business owners, and it's only 50% of Mainers, as the report says, have access to the high-speed internet, and so we need to do obviously more on that, and that's something that I'm certainly committed to do as a legislature this session. These are just some of the highlights that have stood out to me, and it's clear that we have a lot of work cut out for us in this session. with 151 House members and 35 senators representing very different communities all across the state. And I understand that it can definitely be difficult to prioritize our work, but we are committed to helping Maine rebuild and trust the reports like the measures of growth, which I think everyone holds very high as a good barometer and something that was put together with the greatest of intentions, can help narrow our focus and track our progress and develop meaningful policy. So once again, I want to thank the Maine Economic Growth Council for this. I definitely think it's very well done. The Maine Development Foundation for putting this report together. And I would pass it off to one of the people that worked on it, Senator Trey Stewart.
Thank you, President Jackson. I appreciate the introduction and your remarks, and certainly covered a wide gamut in your remarks as to all the different variables that are included in the report that's worked on each year. And it's been my pleasure to serve on the Growth Council in the capacity as representative of the House Republicans, and now transitioning into the Senate side over your end of the building. And looking forward to working with you and our colleagues to make more progress on these the challenging spots that we have, but also underscoring the positive aspects as well. And I think my high level takeaway from the report is that Maine is still and has been and will continue to be a great place to work, live, and raise a family. And that last point is one that I think is really underscored this year with the pandemic. And I know that as a realtor in my private life, we've seen a massive influx of folks from away, which is a term I'm not fond of, but everybody knows what it means when you say it, who are coming to Maine because it is safe, because it is clean, because their kids can go outside and play without them, having to worry about their safety. And to just genuinely raise a family, and those sort of intangible things that you maybe don't get in an inner city or in some other states around the country. So I think it's going to be important this session to capitalize on that. I want to thank everybody that came together, Republicans, Democrats, independents, whether you're political or you're an economically inclined mind. This report really, I think, is a product of the best of Maine, right? It's sort of the cream of the crop come together to help to chart our long-term course. And this has been a product that I know as a legislator, I look forward to getting every year. And in fact, I usually carry it around in my backpack at the State House because it's so helpful as we're crafting policy to be able to see where it all might fit into some of the solutions that we're kicking around day in and day out under the dome. I will say that our economic challenges are two-pronged. I think we first have to figure out how we're going to move forward from the pandemic. And that's more of a short-term, I think, economic struggle that we're going to have as a state. Certainly every state is going to be struggling with that over the next few years. But we can't lose sight of the fact that we still need to have a long-term assessment of where things are at and how we can move our state to where we want to be from a big picture standpoint, talking in terms of decades, not years. And that, I think, is the key role that Maine Development Foundation and certainly these reports year over year are able to assist with. So it's been an honor to be a part of that process. Thank you to everybody who worked so hard on this year's report and given the circumstances. I mean, I'm zooming in from the passenger seat of my vehicle right now, just trying to get home in true 2020 fashion, right? So I appreciate everybody, even with all the craziness that's going on, we still put together, I think, a fantastic report that's going to be incredibly useful to the work of the legislature in the upcoming session. And certainly looking forward to continuing to work with the Mills administration. With that note, I'll hand it off to DECD Commissioner Heather Johnson. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Senator Stewart, and travel safely. I'd like to thank the Maine Development Foundation and the Maine Economic Growth Council. Earlier this year, as a collective state, we released the Strategic Economic Plan, which was designed to be a roadmap that we can all use as we work together to grow Maine's economy. That's even more important today than it probably was then. The Economic Growth Council's ability to review the long-term measures and measures of growth and find ways to align them to the strategic plan will help us all track these important benchmarks as we move forward. Like everyone, the Economic Growth Council has had to adapt their work during the pandemic to give context to our current situation. That is different and outside the norm for measures of growth. So it was, I think, really well done body of work that the team did to give context to some of these metrics in the current situation. These indicators will certainly help us as we all navigate these difficult times. It's clear that we have a lot of work ahead of us. I look forward to working with the business community, the legislature, the Economic Growth Council, local communities, and many others as we move forward. It will certainly take all of us working together. Thank you again to the Economic Growth Council for your ongoing work. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Yellow.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, President Jackson. Thank you, Senator Stewart. This product is on its way to thousands of leaders across Maine. It's on its way to the mailboxes of all legislators since we didn't have the privilege of handing it to them at the State House this year. I think Kathy will orchestrate the Q&A portion, but again, I want to acknowledge the work of the 16 members of the council. I think 13 of the 16 are on today's call, which is a testament to their continued dedication to this work and the resulting product. And I think, Kathy, unless I'm forgetting something, it's back to you to help us orchestrate Q&A in this environment.
Thanks so much. I'm going to open it up to any of the viewers who have guests, and I will, if I don't unmute you, please raise your hand if you're a reporter so I can unmute you and you can ask any questions you may have. I'm unmuting the reporters that I know. Sometimes it's confusing because we'll only have our name and we won't have the media outlet that you're with. Maureen Milliken, I know you're with us from Maine Biz. I've unmuted you. I think you may have to unmute yourself as well if you have any questions, and any of the other reporters who are on who I'm not aware that you are a reporter. Sierra Jordan, I've also unmuted you, but I think you have to unmute yourself. And it may be that we don't have any reporter questions today, that you've all done such an amazing job.
While you're doing that, I'll text my high school kids upstairs to be quiet. Zoom press conferences.
Yeah, the brave new world. If you are a reporter and we are for some reason unable to unmute you, or you're unable to unmute yourselves, you can also put any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Maureen Milliken from Maine, I hope you don't mind that I'm about to share. She put in the chat, I have no questions. I have to look at the report first. It is kind of meaty. It's a lot to absorb. And of course, any of the reporters who are with us, you can email me and I can connect you with any of the speakers or other interviews that you may want to connect with. So we'll give it just a couple of more minutes in case we do have any questions. And while we're waiting, I just want to reiterate, Senator Stewart is not driving. He's assured me that as a mother of twin boys who are going to be driving in a couple of short years, he assured me that a friend of his is driving. And Trey, we really appreciate your efforts to join us via a hotspot while you're on the road.
If he's driving, he's in
Glad I was able to make
England.
it work. That's right.
I think we all know a
Okay.
former Republican legislator used to read the newspaper while driving whenever you passed him on the highway. So
Hey, everyone, I think we'll wrap it up. Again, if you're a reporter, my colleague has put my email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out and we can connect you with either of our economists who helped us develop the report or any of our speakers for you to interview. Thanks so much to all of our panelists.
Thank you.
Yeah, for
Thank
getting
you.
this done.
thanks, everyone.
Hi, that was pretty short.
Well done. Thanks for
That's
taking
exactly.
on the task of representing the council.
Pleasure. Thank you all.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Troy.
It's our pleasure. Nice meeting everybody on
Same here.
Zoom,
Yep, same here. Look forward to meeting you in person.
for sure.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
care.
President.
Yeah, thank you. Seriously, thanks for all your work. You guys did great. This is really, I mean, you always do, but I'm sure it was a little more challenging this time, but thank you, seriously.
Bye,
Take
Ann.
care. See you.
And thank you.
Thank you, guys, really.
Thanks,
And
Gina.
great job, Kathy, putting the script together.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for making the time, particularly what you were dealing with.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for moving your client engagement for us. We know that's
It's
not
my
easy to
pleasure.
do. Thanks a
Right.
lot, Sheena.
Stay